Hello and welcome, Packer fans. I'm Narad Chapik, host of Untitled Packers podcast. Thank you for being here. Thank you for checking out this video. I hope you had a wonderful 4th of July week/weekend. I know I sure did. The weather was hot. The drinks were cold, which always makes for a fabulous combination. I apologize for not getting this video out sooner. I dropped the ball, but I had an extremely good time throughout the week/weekend. And we are now here. We're here to talk about Packer news. More specifically, we are here to talk about the offensive line. What does this offensive line look like heading into training camp? What does it look like heading into the regular season? I'm here to break it all down. It is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So real quick before we get started, I need to give a huge shout out to Christian Ferguson. He is a good friend of mine. He is a fellow subscriber of Untitled Packers podcast. He texted me on Wednesday at about 3 o'clock and asked what my ideas were for the show. And obviously I had a few things floating around that I want to talk about, but he suggested talking about this offensive line. How does this offensive line stack up against the rest of the offensive lines in the NFL? And I thought, hey, that's a great topic to discuss. I didn't talk a whole lot about it in the OTA or offseason, and there probably will be a lot of talk about it heading into training camp, but where do we sit with our offensive line going into training camp? So real quick, before we get started, if you guys are anything like me, your perception of what that offensive line was last year, I actually saw it in one of the comments on the video I posted last week. Your perception is probably that the offensive line isn't all that good. They struggled at times. And there's some statistics to back that up. If we look at the 2018 statistics for this offensive line, they were third in the league for giving up the most sacks. So they gave up a total of 53 total sacks, and they were 10th most for quarterback hits. They gave up 102 quarterback hits. So those two stats specifically can jump off the screen and sort of edify or reinforce the fact, is probably the word I was looking for, that yes, that offensive line did struggle because Aaron Rodgers was constantly getting hit. It seemed like, most specifically, when it was 3rd down and 3, 3rd down and 5, 3rd down and anything, and Rodgers was trying to keep the play alive, it would result in a sack and boom, end of the drive, let's punt the ball, let's move on. It was frustrating to say the least. But I think one thing that we really need to dive into, and something that I realized as I was going through these statistics, is that all that blame for those two particular stats, which are atrocious, mind you, cannot lay solely on the responsibilities of that offensive line. Let's talk about two key points that I think that many of us forget. The first one, Aaron Rodgers himself is known to not want to throw away the ball. He's known to want to extend plays as long as possible, and he's constantly shifty behind that offensive line and in that backfield trying to make things happen. So when you take someone like that, someone like Aaron Rodgers, and you got to take the good with the bad, because when Aaron Rodgers hangs onto the ball as long as he does, good things tend to happen. But when you have a quarterback like that under center and taking reins of that offense, it does put a lot more strain on that offensive line to have to block longer, to have to move around, to have to kind of keep your peripherals in mind everywhere about where Rodgers is and where you need to block him. So I put some of that blame as far as the sacks and the quarterback hits solely on Aaron Rodgers. The second area that we need to put some of that blame on as well is Coach Mike McCarthy and that offense that we ran last year. Packers led the NFL in pass play percentage. So a total of 67.5% of the time, the Packers would run pass plays. Now, if you are a defense going up against the Green Bay Packers, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that you should scheme properly for pass plays versus run plays. This allows you to play perhaps more man coverage, and if you are playing zone, you can actually free up some of those linebackers a little bit more, not have to worry about having a spy on your running back and just solely focus on getting to Aaron Rodgers, and that creates a whole lot of problems. It just makes it very obvious to just, okay, if they're going to run the ball, we'll give up a couple yards here and there, but more times than not, the Packers are going to pass the ball, and that's going to create just on rushes of defenders left and right. So I think these are two things that the offensive line needs to get a break on, because it's not solely their fault. Talking about that, the balance between these offenses, let's look at some of these teams that had a more balanced offense, and probably something that we can expect heading into the 2019 season. When you look at New England, they pass the ball 55% of the time. Chicago and LA also at around 55% of the time. New Orleans, about 54% of the time. The only exception of these, high caliber teams that exploded last year, that were deep in the playoffs outside of a Cody Parkey missed field goal, would be the Kansas City Chiefs, who threw the ball 61% of the time. So of course they have Patrick Mahomes. He's very comparable. You can compare him to a very young or a younger Aaron Rodgers, and it worked for them. They were able to get deep into the playoffs. They were one game, they were an overtime away from making it into the Super Bowl. So I don't think you need to completely imagine or reinvent the wheel when it comes to this offense. I think that you still can throw the ball 60% of the time, but the Packers will and should increase that running game percentage, and that should, change what we can expect for some of this offensive line and what they can go through. Outside of that, offensive line got a brand new head coach. So new for the head coach is Adam Stenavich. It's his first year coming in as an offensive line coach for the Green Bay Packers. He obviously will replace James Campen, who has been the head coach since 2007. Very successful. I mean, that is a long tenure for a coach to be at a single position in the NFL. And this is also Adam Stanovich's first time as a head coach in the NFL. He spent the last 2 seasons out in San Francisco, where he was an assistant line coach, or offensive line assistant coach is what I'm trying to say. So this is his first stab, just like many other coaches on that roster, to get that full-on control of what's going on at the offensive line. And I think he'll be successful. The big thing when you talk about offensive line coaches is that it's all about, the fundamentals. It's making sure that you know your technique, you know your leg movement, you know where you're placing your hands, you're making sure you're not holding. I think they have an amazing foundation with what they have on that offensive line, and you're going to have a new guy that comes in there, just reinforces some of these ideas, comes up with potentially some new ideas, and I'm not too, I don't think we can dive too heavy into that offensive line coach and worry about that it's going to just completely shift what we have going on the offensive line. Very final point that I will make about the roster with the offensive line heading into training camp before we talk about our potential starting lineup. It's that right now, if you were to go to Packers.com, ESPN.com, wherever you get your Packers roster news, you would find that there are 16 offensive linemen currently on that roster heading into training camp. And now, if history is going to repeat itself, which we can't necessarily rely on because we do have a new head coach running the team heading into the season. But if history is to repeat itself, the Packers have kept 9 on the roster heading into the 2018 season, 10 on the roster heading into the 17 season, and 8 on the roster heading into the 16 season. So they really range anywhere from that 8 to 10 offensive linemen that they like to keep around in case, injuries pop their head up. And of course, they'll probably throw some on the practice squad as well. So I expect that 16 to get knocked down to, in my opinion, it's probably going to get knocked down to about 9. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about our stars. Let's talk about what we have, and really if we need to worry, because I don't think that we need to worry about what we have on the offensive line. But let's dive into it. There's no better place to start than the left tackle, that is David Bakhtiari, 27 years old, entering his 7th season in the NFL. Mr. Beer Chugger McBeerchuggerton, ranked number 1 tackle in the NFL with a 93.0 pass block grade in the last 3 seasons. So if you go out to Pro Football Focus, do it. I know a lot of you guys are fact checking me and feeling the need to comment down below, but if you go out there, Pro Football Focus, he is listed as the number 1 tackle in the NFL. He is also ranked as the 13th best player in the NFL. So that includes quarterbacks, running backs, safety, wide receiver, you name it. He's the 13th highest ranked player in the NFL. And Mr. Rodgers himself is ranked number 17. So he is the highest ranked Packer in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. And he is, he is the gold standard for what you want out of that left tackle position. He is covering Rodgers' blind side. He is Mr. Dependable. He's young. He's still 27 years old. He's probably gonna, I don't know, I'm just spitfiring some stuff right now, but I'm sure he'll get a contract extension and spend, many more years in Green Bay, especially if he continues to go out there and just do what he does. Moving a little bit further to the right, we talk about Lane Taylor, 29 years old at left guard. also entering his 7th season. Now, this one in particular is a little bit of an interesting thing. So Lane Taylor, excellent player. He has been fairly dependable. He has been a great option for that starting lineup. He's ranked number 25 among all guards in the NFL with a grade of 64.2. But the reason why I caution you with Lane Taylor is that there is a guy by the name of Elton Jenkins, who the Packers drafted number 44 overall in the 2019 draft, that I do think is going to be a matchup or a starting position fight going into training camp and going throughout training camp. Elton Jenkins is going to give him a run for his money, and that's awesome. We need this competition. Part of the reason why you carry 16 offensive linemen into training camp is because you are hoping that the competition is fierce and that you really end up with the best 9 players once everything is said and done. So I like Lane Taylor at that left guard. Either way, I do expect him to make the roster. I do actually see him in that starting role in the first few weeks, but keep an eye on Elton Jenkins. He seems like kind of that wild card. He's obviously the future for that position as we look forward, but he's going to get a chance just like anybody else on that roster to make an impact right away. When we look a little bit, if you're going to hike the ball, that is the center. We're going to talk about Corey Linsley. Has not missed a game the last 2 seasons. If you look back on his 2017 season, he participated in 1,047 snaps, even though he was fighting numerous injuries. I think he was actually fighting a back injury more than anything else. But he's Mr. Dependable. He hasn't missed a game in 2 seasons. That's just crazy for an offensive lineman. He's ranked number 15 overall for offensive linemen, and he's ranked number 4 in 2018 for the center position. So look at what I'm talking about right now, guys. If you have any doubt about how our offensive line is looking or shaping up heading into the season, we have one of the best, if not the best, tackles in David Bakhtiari. You have someone who is steady and reliable and can get the job done with Lane Taylor. And then you talk about Corey Linsley under that center position, who is highly regarded, who does great for his job, and he has that experience working with Rodgers to know exactly what Rodgers likes to do as far as the silent counts, whether he's calling people offsides and he needs to snap that ball. He's coming into that prime role, or his experience role, with the Green Bay Packers, where I think he's the perfect fit. They actually don't even have listed on their roster another center, so it seems like he is the man. Corey Linsley is going to be the guy that you're going to have in that starting position. No need to talk about him anymore, but we do need to talk about our right guard / tackle, Billy Turner. So if you guys are anything like me, I think I've already used that line, so it came to a surprise to me digging into Billy Turner that I dropped the ball and I did not do my homework when he was signed back in March, whenever free agency opened up. 27 years old, entering his 6th season, signed a 4-year, $28 million contract with the Green Bay Packers. The reason why I kind of feel like I dropped the ball is because I expected when you go out there and you spend a 4-year, $28 million contract on somebody, that he must be highly regarded. He must be one of the best guys at his position. But unfortunately, and I hate to burst your bubble, I think he's going to be a great player, and I think the Packers probably see something in him to excel and have a successful 4-year stint with Green Bay. But he's struggled throughout his career. Quite frankly, he was drafted by the Dolphins back in 2024. Oh, shoot. So Mr. Turner was drafted by the Dolphins and where he spent his first 2 full seasons, jumped around in 2016 where he started on the Dolphins roster, went over to the Ravens roster, and then finally ended up in the Broncos, and then finished his last 2 seasons as an offensive lineman, obviously, for the Broncos. So for someone that should be highly regarded, or someone that is respected or deserves a 4-year, $28 million contract, I don't know why he was jumping around. I don't know why the Dolphins got rid of him after 2 years. I'm not sure why Baltimore only had him for a handful of months and then released him. And then I don't know why Denver decided not to pay him buco dollars to stick around. They obviously don't have a quarterback that they got to pay a whole lot of money for, but I regress. We're not talking about the quarterback situation in Denver. Regardless, he finished his 2018 campaign with an overall 62.8 grade, not the greatest, and he ranked 33rd among all guards. So Billy Turner, shockingly, surprisingly, is the lowest ranked starter for their position among the entire roster. When you look at Bakhtiari at number 1, Lane Taylor number 25, Corey Linsley at number 4 among centers, and he's ranked 33 among all guards. I guess if you want to boast about it, we have the 2 of the top 33 guards in the NFL on our offensive line, but I don't really know if that's anything that you want to get excited about. I do, like I said, Billy Turner will have a successful career in Green Bay. I mean, just go out there and block. That's all you gotta do. Make running lanes. Your job's, it's really difficult, but your job's not, rocket science. You just have to get the fundamentals down, get the techniques down. And I'm not a hater of Billy Turner. I was just shocked to find out that he jumped around so much before he ended up at Green Bay. Finishing out that starting lineup, none other than right tackle Bryan Bulaga. So this guy, if you were unaware, because it kind of spaced my memory, 30 years old, entering his 10th season in Green Bay. So his Pro Football Focus grade of 75.0 ranks him at number 20 for offensive tackles. So now you have the number 1 and the number 20 tackle. He's the second best pass blocking grade for a right tackle. And him and Bakhtiari are regarded as one of the top tackling duos or top tackle duos in the NFL. So what else do you want outside of that? I mean, you have one of the greatest quarterbacks that the NFL has ever seen. Yes, he needs to win some more Super Bowls, but arguably you have the best quarterback the NFL has ever seen, and you have two guys on the ends of that offensive line that can keep him upright, that are solid, that you can rely on. Started 14 games in 2018 and is one of only 4 Packers that are still a part of that Super Bowl winning team back in 2010, 2011. So I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it, but you have Aaron Rodgers, Tramon Williams, you have Mason Crosby, and then of course you have Bryan Bulaga. So these are your 4 guys that have won a Super Bowl in Green Bay. They are the only 4 guys on that roster that have won a Super Bowl in Green Bay. And, I think that's something that you have to appreciate. The Packers could have saved over $6 million had they decided to release Bulaga after the 2018 season. He's coming into the final year of a 5-year, $33 million contract that he signed in the 2015 season. So I do predict this is his final year in Green Bay. Hopefully he goes out on a high note rather than like Josh Sitton, who shockingly got traded. I remember when he got traded out of nowhere and we were all like, what the hell are they doing in Green Bay? Why are they getting rid of an incredible offensive lineman? But the Packers see value in him to give up that option to save some money on the cap, to save some money to go out and hire or sign other players on the roster. Says something. They believe that he can still play. They see value in him. I see value in him. 30 years old. He's going to have his swan song in Green Bay, and hopefully he stays healthy. He struggled with a pair of torn ACLs in his career and a hip injury recently. But I do see Bulaga being, just rock solid on that offensive line. So there you have it. There's our projected starters: Bakhtiari, Taylor, Linsley, Turner, and Bulaga. These guys are the foundation. This is a great group at the offensive line, and it all boils down to one thing. You just got to stay healthy. You just got to stay healthy. If these 5 guys can stay healthy, we're going to be just fine. We're not going to have to worry too much about Rodgers taking sacks because the scheming will be different. These guys will be able to keep him upright, and they're going to be running the ball more. They'll be making lanes. That's awesome. Other notable players that should, if not will, make the roster as we look forward. I have 4 guarantee guys. You have Elton Jenkins, as I spoke about before, 44th overall pick, Mississippi State rookie. He makes the roster. That's a no-brainer. Jason Spriggs, a little bit of a wild card on this one. He has struggled in his rookie contract to stay on the field, to be a dependable, not even to stay on the field, but just to be a great blocker. But he filled in all right when Bryan Bulaga went down last season with an injury. I do see, hopefully, him improving year over year, as most players do, and making a roster spot. Justin McCray, guard, should also make the roster. He played a role last year as well and held his own. His stats did not jump off the board, but like I said, he held his own. He was able to go out there, get the job done. I believe he makes the roster. And then Cole Madison is also a guard. I see him making the roster. Now, if you forgot, then you haven't been watching my previous videos, but Cole Madison drafted last year, so a year and a little over a year ago he was drafted. Ended up taking an entire season off for personal issues. He hasn't gotten into it, but he is back on the roster. He is refocused and ready to go. And he should play a pivotal role in making this offensive line a better unit. There's a bunch of other guys. Obviously, I only listed off 9. I do see 9 players, offensive linemen, for sure making that team. But if that 10th person jumps out among everyone else, they might bring a 10th person on that offensive line and round it out. So to overview what my thoughts are, and hopefully after this video, you can agree, I think our offensive line is sitting pretty well. I think they need to figure out that right tackle position because, like I said, Bulaga is not going to be there next year, and they do need to find someone to fill in at his role. Possibly Elton Jenkins comes out and plays guard, and then they swing Billy Turner out and play tackle if that's something that needs to happen. But I would really love to see them go out and draft a tackle early on next year. If not, go out and sign one next year, because outside of that, the rest of that offensive line, I'm just staring at it on my computer, and I'm happy. I think you guys should not worry so much. I know I feel a lot better after doing some research and digging into it. But yeah, here we are. That's the video. That wraps up the offensive line. Again, I apologize for not getting this video out sooner. I really wanted to, but I struggled with this one. I had like 40 takes, and then I would get, a little bit on a roll, and then I would completely lose my train of thought, and I'd have to take another drink, and it just wasn't going well. But the video is out now because you guys are watching it. If you like the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and comment down below. I've had a huge influx of comments on my last video. My last video has been doing really well. The top 5 potential breakout players. If you haven't seen it, check it out. A lot of you don't necessarily agree with my list, but that's fine. I'm not a pro, sports analyst, but I appreciate all the comments that have come in, all the views that have taken place, the likes. It's been awesome. So comment down below. I will respond to your comments if you do so. And moving forward, as we look forward, in the next couple of days, I will release a video this Friday. I'm going to be diving into the whole DeShone Kizer aspect and whether or not I see him as a potential backup to Rodgers when Rodgers... I don't want to even talk about it's going to be emotional. I don't want to see Rodgers. I don't even want to think about Rodgers no longer being a Green Bay Packer. But that is the topic I'm going to be diving into. Again, thank you for watching the video, and I will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.